Okay, so first thing, we're gonna find a nice video reference. Not this one. So I'm gonna go with parkour, something a little bit dynamic. Parkour, jump. Let's see. That looks nice. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Skip, 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 skip. Hey, how are you? Yep, no problem. See if it has what we need. As long as it has good presentation, you have your full motion, it's fine. So it's missing the landing, which is okay. I mean, what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to keyframe the launch. I'm sure I can find better than this, but yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. It has a clear, nice view of the poses, so I'm going to go with that. I'm not worried too much about the landing because what I'm thinking next week, I'm going to stitch a run before this and a roll, a mocap roll after the landing. So I'm not too worried about, I just want those poses in the air, basically, the jump itself and the trajectory. So I'm going to go with something because I'm not going to waste too much time searching for something else. It works for the cases today. What do you guys use nowadays for downloading clips? What's it called? Convert. It's an extension. Online video converter. Okay, let's try. Paste. This one? Only one. Okay. Let's see what kind of resolution we get. So downloads. Is it done? Yeah, good. Perfect. Okay, before, I don't know if you know about this software. It's called Keyframe MP. It's basically a frame-by-frame video player. But the nice thing about it is you can have it on top of Motionbuilder. So it's like the display, it's an overlay on top. So Keyframe MP, I'm going to download it. So it's recording in the video, so you're going to get the site as well. So there's a free version. It plays almost everything, MOVs, MPEGs. You can go frame by frame. You can, with the purchase version, there's more features. You can bookmark stuff in it. It's pretty cool. But the free one works too. You can play ranges as well. Specific ranges. Yeah. Keyframe? Perfect. So open it up and download the video. But I'm just waiting for the install to show you. MP. Keyframe MP. What? Run anyway. If you get a pop-up on Windows, just click read more. I will give you the installation. You'll see in a second. It's a video player, but it will let you go frame by frame. You can use it anywhere. Like it's an external. Actually, I think one of the full features for this software is you can connect it to Maya and you can go frame by frame. So when you're doing frame by frame in the video, it will go frame by frame in Maya. So there's a connection between both of them. But the free version doesn't do that, unfortunately. But if you want to buy it, I think it's like $30 or something. If I'm going to open the video, and it's basically the arrow keys are your frame by frame. It's straightforward. So you see, it allows you to go to the frames and pick the frames that you want to keyframe inside Motionbuilder. Okay. So in the view, no, where is it? Always on top. There should be a always on top playback. Always on top, right there. So if you go edit, always on top. So now it's on top of everything. So if you go in Motionbuilder, now you have that player here, and you can keyframe here on the side, and you can scrub. You don't have to always go back and forth, right? It's just a workflow that I prefer, but it's up to you if you want to use it. So you can actually do time range in the free version. So if you grab the end here and you scroll to the right, this is your first, sorry, this one. Oh, it doesn't let you, okay. There must be a limitation on the free version. It's okay. So we'll work with like this for now. Oh, this is the running version. Okay. So I'm gonna replicate the building. I'm just gonna build a box and import the character. So I'm gonna go in, let's say samples, characters. I'm gonna load this guy. No animation. Just to explain this again. So right now, this character is on the skeleton. We need to enable to animate. We need the control rig. So we need to switch the control rigs. When you switch the source like this, it will ask you, because there's no control rig yet in the scene, so it will ask you the first time. Do you want an FKIK? You click FKIK, and then you have the character. So now it's ready for keyframing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this scene. I'm going to start touching a little bit about organizing your folders, because this is super important. As we go along, it's going to get a little bit messy, so it's better to be organized from the beginning. So remember last week, created a folder called Mubu, inside of it called characters. So I'm going to put this T-pose character inside here, okay? And he's called Aragor. I'm going to save it here. Yeah. Sure. Window. It's good? Okay. So now that I saved the character in T-pose, it's ready, let's say, for another session. So I'm going to leave it like this. But since I'm keyframing a new animation now, I'm going to save it in something else. Save it in another folder. So let's call new folder called anims. Okay? Because this way you separate the character from the animation files that you will do. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but for you, for organizing after, I highly suggest you do something like this. So let's say you download the character from Mixamo in T-Pose, you put it in the characters folder. When you start animating, you save it in another folder called anims, because you don't want to use, you want to have a base and then build on top of it. Okay? So in anims, I'm going to call this, let's say, parkour jump. And I'm going to build that same setup. So if you go in templates, elements, there's a bunch of primitives here. There's like a cube, there's a sphere. It's actually, there's another folder called primitives. Yeah. So you have a plane, a cone, a bunch of simple objects. So I'm just going to drag the cube and actually duplicate it. When you do want to duplicate, you select, right-click on the object, you go duplicate, and then move it. It duplicates it right on top of each other. So what I'm seeing here, we need, let's say, a 5 meter and a 3 meter, roughly. Ballpark. So each object inside Motionbuilder has a properties. So if you select the cube and you go in the properties, you will see the translation, rotation, and scale. So right now the scale is 111 everywhere. So we need the height, which is y. Y is the height, to be 300. But the way it works in Motionbuilder, by the way, it's in centimeters. The units are in centimeters. The number that you put in there is from the pivot point, from the pivot of the object, and it's the number from the pivot point up and down. So let's say you want 300, you have to put 150. You always have to divide it, because it's 150 up and 150 down from the pivot point. Okay. So if you want to be precise, you need to put these numbers. So right now what we get is not correct. Why is it that big? Yeah, but it should be 2 meters. See, centimeter. Okay, that's weird. Let me check the units. Maybe by default the units is different. Because see here, look, when you go front view, orthographic front, these numbers here are in units, on centimeters. So I'm just curious why it was this big. Sorry, you had a question? You can scale it manually, yeah, but just I like sometimes, if you want to be precise, sometimes it's better to go through this. I just want to find out if the units are in centimeters or something else. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but units architectural. I don't know what that means. So I'll switch it to centimeter and then put it back to 1. And if I put 100, no. Okay, something is weird there. I don't know. I'm just going to scale it by hand then. So 27. That doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm going to have to look into this later, but so roughly this is, if we go 5 meters, this is about 5 meters. Because he's 2, 2. And 5 is right here, right? Yeah. It's okay. We're not making a building or a blueprint. I think that's about right. Scale it down a little bit. Okay. So we need one here. And obviously scale it a little bit in X and Z, just for him to land softly. So I'm gonna round it out to 7, whatever, 15. Okay, maybe it's 15, but doesn't make sense. I don't know. 10. And then this one, 7, 10. 27. Okay, so I'll put these here. Try to animate in a straight line. Don't worry too much about animating in a diagonal because it's a bit harder to animate in a diagonal, to keyframe, I mean. We'll worry about placement next week. Placement, rotation of the motion, the whole motion itself. We'll go through it next week. It's pretty easy once you get into the story mode. So animate either on one axis, right? So like either the X or the Z. Okay. So I'm gonna freeze these guys. Let me just check the video reference. Yeah, it's close enough. I'm gonna freeze the group so I don't select them by mistake. So wall, doesn't matter. I'm gonna freeze the mesh as well so I don't keep selecting him. So skin or mesh, and remove the pick and translation. So right now I only select the control rig in the viewport. Save. So now we're ready for the fun part. I touched a little bit last week with some of you. So if you look up here, there's all these stickman figures here. So what these mean, actually the only two that you'll be using is the blue one, this one, and this one, body part. Okay. Usually my workflow is to always work with full body. What full body means is it's the type of key that you put on the character. Okay. So if you have this character, you put a key, or the default shortcut is K. So as you will see, I just created a key here. Okay. So it's red because we just keyframed in full body. What full body means is there's a key on every bone on the control rig. Okay. So if you select the arm, you select the head, all of these bones have a key on that frame, on frame 0 that we just created. Okay. Now if you switch to body part and you press K again and you select the arm, there's no key there on frame 4. See? So what just happened is you just put a key on the head. Okay, think of it as limbs. So the head is one limb, the head and the neck are one. So if I select the neck, which is the FK bone, remember last week, the rectangle stuff is the FK bones and the spheres are the IK bones. See? They both have that same key. But if you select the shoulder, the key doesn't exist. So this is one limb, shoulder to finger, actually no, shoulder to wrist is another limb. Fingers is separate. So if you decide to put keys on the fingers, so I'm selecting the fingers, I press K on frame 4. But if I select the hand, the key doesn't exist. So that's the difference between full body keying and body part keying. Yeah. So everybody's workflow is different. My workflow is when I'm setting key poses and in-betweens, I'm in full body, because then I look at the timeline. I don't have a bunch of keys everywhere. So I keep it clean. Even though, let's say, on my next pose, I'm not moving the body that much. I'm just doing like maybe a settle or something subtle. I put a full body key, but then because what happens after you put your poses, you have to do a timing pass. And that timing pass is you grab those keys and you manipulate them to get the timing that you want, right? So it's much cleaner to have full body poses so you can move around and get your timing right. And then you switch to body part and you start offsetting the limbs. You see what I'm getting at? Yeah. So you'll see it. We'll go through that today and you'll see the advantage. You'll see. Yeah. You can switch to Maya. You can go to settings, interaction mode, and switch from Motionbuilder to Maya. But you might not be able to follow sometimes because I'm using Motionbuilder. So if I use a keyboard shortcut, I'll try to remember to say the equivalent in Maya. But just be careful. I'm not gonna force you to use Motionbuilder. If you want to use Maya shortcuts, go for it. Okay. Yeah. Yes, it's recorded. Yeah. Yep. I hope so. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the body part? Yeah. 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 I'll try. We'll see how much we can get in an hour. If we make it to layers, I'll touch a little bit on it. I'll touch a little bit at the end. Yeah. Because the layers come after you're creating your poses on the base layer. So you don't use layers much in the beginning, only after. Okay. So spine as well is a different limb. Pelvis is a different limb. And the legs from the hips down. The hips is a bit, the legs are a bit different. The toes is considered part of the whole foot. So it's not like the fingers. Fingers is considered another limb. Okay, that's it for the top here. These guys, the pinning, we're going to use these a lot. So pinning, think of it as, so let's say you're in full body and you try to move the pelvis. Okay. So the feet are locked because they're in IK. But let's say we turn on the IK on the arms. And we try to move the hips again. Oh, it works. Okay. Last week it wasn't working. Maybe I was doing something wrong. So the thing is, with the arms turned on IK, if you decide to, if you're just like the exercise we're doing today, if the body is moving in midair, there's a big displacement, you kind of have to animate like this and move the arm afterwards. Okay? If you don't have IK on, what happens is when you move the pelvis, okay, the feet stay there, but the hand will follow because it's not in IK, it's not locked in the world space. That's the difference between IK and FK too. It's not just how you manipulate the arm. IK means it's locked in the world space. Wherever you lock it, it's there. That's why the feet stay, because they're trying to stay in that position before moving the pelvis, this position. So normally for the majority of keyframing, you want the pelvis and the feet in IK, because I mean, you're always walking, you're doing something on a flat surface or terrain. Let's say you're doing a zero gravity game, or you have a shot you're doing for VFX. That's probably when you would turn off the IK, because you want the feet to be floating. There's no contacts. You don't have to worry about contacts for the feet. I'm just giving examples when you use it, when you don't use it. But for our case today, we have to turn on the feet as IK. I'm just trying to see if there's anything. We'll get to these as we're keyframing. IK, so that's where you turn off. So let's say I want to turn off I can turn off actually the translation and the rotation, or one of them. Okay, so let's say on the foot I turn off the IK translation, T and R, translation, rotation. And now if I move the pelvis, or actually rotate, that's when you see it. So the foot moves, but if you notice, the rotation of the foot stays the same. Why? Because the rotation is still locked. See? So if I turn it off, then it rotates. So always IK, there's two things you need to consider: translation and rotation. You can lock even the rotation. Oh, sorry, the translation. Oh, what did I have before? I think I had this. Okay. So now if we lock the rotation, oh, I just turned them both on. Okay. No, I think I had it the other way. Oh, I'm doing the wrong one. I don't think it works like that, but yeah. Yeah, for feet it's different, because I don't think you can do one without the other. I'm changing the pelvis again. I shouldn't be changing the pelvis. So now if I lock, oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So you can lock just the position, but free up the rotation. So when you rotate, the ankle rotates, but it's still fixed in translation. It's still pinned down. So that's the difference. Anyways, you'll understand it better once we start keyframing. I think we're ready. Yeah, there's not much. So if you want to access the toes, you can access it from here, the little arrow. This is the toe bone. If you press F on the keyboard, you zoom to the selected object. If you have nothing selected and you press F, it zooms to all the objects in your scene. Okay, let's start. So my first pose. So he's coming from a run. Here, he's sort of pushing down. If you notice, he's pushing down a little bit to start jumping. So we want to we want to do this pose. So the left leg is passing. He's crouching down, and the right arm is forward. Okay. So I'm going to start creating this pose. So right now, okay. I'm going to turn on the rotation as well. Okay. So, like I said before, I'm in full body, so I'm going to start keyframing in full body. So I take this character, put him up here. You just need to select the pelvis. You don't need to select all the pieces. You just select the pelvis, which is the parent for all the bones. So right now here, I want to move him here, but the feet are pinned down for some reason. Is it the same thing? Yeah. So enable to move. If you want to move the legs and the pelvis at the same time, you can select all three. Okay? So you can go like this. Now you can move all three. This way you don't have to move them all individually. And then rotate to face the jumping platform. Okay? So now I'm ready to keyframe. Okay, so I'm going to delete those keys. Actually, I'm just going to create a key on frame 8, delete the other ones, and move that key to frame 0. Okay, that's how you move keys on the timeline. So now there's nothing else. Those test keys we were doing, I just deleted them. Okay, so I'm going to start making this pose. So left leg, this one. Something like that. So he's anticipating, so we need to push the hips a little bit down. By the way, you can hide the control rig in the viewport if it's too noisy for you, and just use the picker here, right? So the way to do this is you go in display and choose models only, because by default it's X-ray. You just go display, models only. The shortcut is Control A. So if you go Control A on your keyboard, you cycle through all these display options. Okay? So arms down. So right now the hips are a bit too straight, so we want to tilt it a little bit to match the energy, right? He's anticipating, so it must be tilting forward a little bit. So rotation, tilt it a little bit down. For rotation, yes. The hips is this little one in the center. No. Well, it moves the entire character because everything is in FK. It shouldn't be moving the feet as well. Okay, let me come over. I'm not sure what... Like I was saying, for rotation, my preference is to always change the gizmo to local view, because you're not sure how it's exactly oriented unless you switch to that view. By default, it's global. So if you hold down the global button and you switch to local, then you actually see the local axis, how it's oriented on that bone. Okay. I always like to work with global. The shortcut for this is F5, F6. F6 will switch to global. F5, that's the screen capture. Never mind. So F5, F6. F5. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna use I'll switch it after. Okay, so I just tilted the hips a little bit forward. I want to put more weight on the planted foot, so usually you learn this in animation principles. I'm giving you a sneak peek. So usually the leg that has the weight is the higher one. So if when you walk, the planted foot is higher on the hips, right? So it's the same principle here. So it's going to be a little bit tilted on. Oh man. Okay, it's going to be tilted more on the planted foot. Okay. Spine is straightforward, so we need a little bit rotation on the spine. So if you notice, I've selected the IK, the top part of the spine. So you don't have to actually go in and rotate all these joints like this. You can if you want to, but it's just quicker. You select the top part of the spine chain, the IK, right, the sphere, and you rotate it. So you will get this, if you want to call it, gradient rotation on all the spine bones. It's pretty handy. So you get a nice curve on the body, on the spine, sorry. Okay. For a bit more interesting pose on the spine, I usually go sideways a little bit because you're going to be favoring more, because when you're running, your spine not only does this, it will do this and this. All three axes are moving at the same time. So you want subtle motion on all the axes. So a little bit like this. The head is straight because he's looking where he's jumping. And then the arms. So the arms, again, I'm selecting the IK chain of the arm and positioning it. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about pinning. So I didn't touch too much about it. So pinning is, if you don't want to use the IK, switch the whole arm to IK. You can use what they call is temporary IK pinning. So this is these two buttons. These two buttons does the same thing as the reach here, but it's only temporary. Yeah. Sorry? One is translation and one is rotation. So this one, you're still in FK, but you're temporarily pinning the arm down or whatever limb on the skin. So if you pin this one, the hand, the wrist, then what you could do, you could take the elbow and rotate it. Okay? But when you move the pelvis now, it's still free because it's still in FK, right? Let me see. Yeah. So, but if you move any part of the arm, that wrist is pinned down. Okay? See this is the difference? Because otherwise, if you had this on and you try to move it, it's pinned down in world space. So think of it as a temporary pinning solution just to pose your character. Okay? So I pinned the wrist just to get the elbow in the right place to match the pose and on the screen. So that's pinning and translation. Okay, see the difference? Look at the arm, how it's moving. Okay, but let's say you're doing an animation. Let's say somebody has a gun. He's a Rainbow Six operative, or you're doing an animation for a squad. But you want that rotation on the wrist to keep the gun aiming the same way. So you want to move it, but you don't want the wrist to go down like this, the rotation of the wrist. Okay? You can actually keep that rotation and move it while keeping that same orientation. So if you use the pinning on the rotation, that's what you get. See? So imagine there's a weapon here, there's a gun attached to it. So you're repositioning the arm with that rotation constraint. I don't know if it's clear. A bit, yeah. So you probably won't use that a lot if you're not dealing with weapons or something you need to keep aiming at something. You're probably not going to use it too much, but it's there if you need it. So I'm going to take the rotation off. So it goes back to, I would say, natural movement, because that's the more natural way of moving things, right? The arm rotation is following where the elbow is going. Key pose. Then I'm going to do the other arm. So this arm should be technically backwards. All right. Because we don't see it in the video. Or maybe not. We'll see on the next frame where it's supposed to go. So I'm going to move up, let's say, 5 frames. And go to my next pose. So we have the anticipation, we have the push. So yeah, I would say this is my next pose, because it's the sort of the takeoff, and there's a lot of energy from that. So if you don't have that pose, and let's say you go to this pose, it's just going to blend linearly from this pose to this pose. So you're not going to have that sudden takeoff pose. You're gonna lose it. So I would say this would be this, or this would be my next pose. I'm gonna go with this. This is a bit more dynamic. The leg is more stretched out, so it feels like he's pushing away with it. Don't worry too much about where your next key is on which frame, because after you do your poses, then you go in and move those key poses around to get your timing right. Okay. Yeah, something I didn't cover, should be on 30 frames per second, because most of the mocap files are at 30. So I would switch the 24 to 30. It's not a big deal. You can fix that later. But just to be on the safe side, go to 30. See, when you switch from 24 to 30, now my frame number goes to 625. So be careful with the conversion, because it converts it for you. So you need to be on frame 5 exact. You don't want the key between the frames. So maybe just switch to 30 FPS in the beginning so you don't forget. Okay, so now we're ready for the next pose. So as you can see, there's contrast in the hips. The hips now, they're not tilted forward, they're tilted upward because he's launching. So that's the contrast that you want in your poses, okay? So we'll go like this. It's stretching because of the IK. Wait a minute. Is he? Yeah, that's correct. So we want to tilt the foot. Whoops. So rotation, always try to rotate in one axis at a time, because if you start doing this, you can if you want, but you'll get some weird, funky poses. So try to, you have more control if you rotate one axis at a time. Okay? So you have that nice stretch. The leg is hyperextended, so you want to bring it in a little bit just to relax it. You still want that stretch in the leg because it's the push off, but it shouldn't look like it's hyperextending. So we get that nice bend in it. If you want to compare the previous frame to this frame, you just go with the arrow keys, back, left and right. Frame by frame is you have to hold down Control. I think that thing is not recording, huh? It's not recording the keyboard shortcuts. Okay. For some reason it shut down. So frame by frame, you have to hold down Control and go left and right. Frame to frame or keyframe to keyframe is just arrow keys. Okay. Then I have to move a little bit faster. Yes.
Every time I go with my arrow, I'm supposed to press A before going with the arrow, so I can see, because when I change back, I always just does it. No?
I'll come see you after. I'll come see you after. Because arrow keys is keyframe to keyframe. Control down, left and right is frame by frame. Unless you're using Maya. If you're using Maya, I'm not sure what those shortcuts are. But I'll come see you after. It's only an hour left, half an hour left. For the other foot, so the other foot, the foot is more in front because it's pushing away. So again, here you can use the pin rotation, because if you like that rotation on the ankle and you just want to move the foot, that's where you use the pinning. See? If you don't want it, just turn it off and it will rotate where the movement is going, which is more natural. But sometimes you're happy with the rotation, you want to keep it, so might as well pin it and use it. To keyframe in Maya, it's S, yeah. So here, the spine is sort of going back because he's pushing off with his spine. So you want that nice C, and maybe this way, and a bit more tilted. The arm is going up. Let me see. Close enough. Yeah, it's don't think you're gonna get the pose right from the beginning. Think of it again like sculpting. You start with a rough shape and then you chisel away the deep details, right? So if it's close to the reference that you see, move on to the next one. And I have to move fast because we only have half an hour left. So here I would go almost to the, if you look at the pelvis, you can see the trajectory is going like a big C. So my next pose is probably in the middle of the arc somewhere. It's gonna blend well to that. So you don't need to create all the in-betweens. You can create all the in-betweens later if you need to. So think pose to pose, key poses, and then the breakdowns. Breakdowns as necessary. Whoops. I did control. What did I do? All right. I was trying to do control right arrow on the video.
Shortcut for the rotation and movement.
TR. Maya, I think it's WE. Yeah. Where Motionbuilder, it's T translation, R for rotation. So I'm looking for the peak of the arc. So I would say around here. This is a nice, like his feet are tucked in. So I'm gonna go with this. Again, I'll move to frame 10. Whee. So I would say save. No. So the hips are starting to come down a little bit. I would put some tilt in the hips. And which one is front now? Okay, so the takeoff foot now is in front, so we need to switch. Okay. Something like this. Always look at your pose from different angles because sometimes it could be broken. Because looking at it from one angle is not enough sometimes. So here I'm gonna try to push up the. By the way, has anybody done keyframing on the side or in the other classes? On a body like a biped? Bouncing balls? Yeah. Okay. So this is your first. I'll be easy on you guys. It's fun. It's fun for the animator loving students. So it's going to be a fun exercise. You're going to learn a lot from it. So the spine is forward because he's crunching up on top of the arc. So we're going to tuck him in. You can use translation as well, but it's not that useful. And maybe just straighten up the... So I would keep the head straight now. He's looking too much in a fetal position. Yeah, there's a lot of problems in skinning on this guy, so don't worry too much about it. As long as he's roughly in the same, the intended pose, should I call it. So I'm just going to check what's going on with the arms. So see, the arms are going high here, and then they're starting to come down. So we need him to start going down again. But the elbows are still high. So what do? We lock the you pin the arms, and then you rotate the elbow. Okay. So be careful a lot with the shoulders, because don't ignore them, use them, because a lot of beginning animators don't use the shoulders. So right now, this is very unnatural. So you need to always make nice lines with the control rig. So this is too harsh. So you need to soften it up by moving the shoulders, either in one axis or both. Prefer 2 axis because then you have this nice curve. Okay. Because then when you move the shoulders, you have more leeway, right, for the arm. Let's say you want to extend the arm a little bit more, you have more leeway, so it looks more natural. The other arm, same thing. I'm going to show you quickly another technique in, you know what? Yeah, just very quickly. I'm not gonna. Probably next week. Maybe no. Next week is story. We'll see. So if you look at down here in the something called pose control. So this is your pose library. You can create poses, paste poses. It's a pose library. If you're not familiar with the pose library, there's a bunch of poses you can reuse. You can paste. You can actually paste on body parts. When you create a pose, you're creating a full body pose. But when you paste, you have options. You can paste in body part. That's when you use body part. You can paste in body part. So in this case, I want the same arm, the left arm, pasted on the right arm. Okay? And offset it a little bit, obviously. So what do? I create a pose in here. By default, these guys are on. I'm not going to touch too much on it today. It's a bit confusing. I would turn those off. But what happens is you have this pose now, right? You go in body part. You select the other arm, right? You put mirroring on. M is mirror pose. By default, yeah, it's split in half. So that's the axis that it's going to paste to use, right? So if it's in the middle, you can actually change this, but I'm not going to go through it because, yeah, don't worry about it. So by default, the axis is correct. So you select the other arm, you put on mirror, and you paste. So what happens is it pastes the arm on the opposite side, using those same values. Okay? I know it's a little bit hard to grasp because that's how you create if you want poses quickly. Instead of posing again the same thing, it's another way. So you paste it, you put a key, you remove the M because you don't want that gizmo on all the time. And we need to offset this because right now it's 1-to-1 from the left side or right side, I should say. Okay. We offset it a little bit. Is it a little bit lower? I think so. Yeah. So a little bit lower. Maybe raise the elbow a little bit. Or maybe down. Much more down. Something like this. Okay? That's it. That's how you use mirroring. Pose control and mirroring. You don't have to use it, but if you decide to play with it, it's there. So you don't need all this. You need this one right before the landing. This is a really nice pose to see before the land. You want something in there because see the arms are going backwards, and it's a nice breakdown between the apex of the curve and the landing. Okay, so we're going to go with this. I might have to move the box actually. It's okay, we'll move the box after, it's no big deal. I'm going to switch back to full body. Actually, let's see what we got so far. I still got it, huh? It's not bad. The timing is off, obviously, but you could see where it's going. So let's finish up the next, yes? No, you move and you keyframe. Yeah. Because if you don't like your changes, you can always cancel it or undo. Where were we? Yeah, for 15, I'm going to go to 15 and create this next one. By the way, if you want to see the trajectory of the hips, because that's the most important thing in the body is the trajectory of the hips, because that drives everything. So if you want to see the trajectory, is up here. So right now it's linear because we've been. It's right here. Trajectory, the yellow dots on top. Yeah, it's weird that it's in. Okay, no worries. We'll figure that out after. It shouldn't be in linear because we've been setting auto keys. Unless if I switch this to. It is auto. Okay, we'll do a pass on the F curves after we're done those two poses. Actually, it might change now because we're changing the pose to down. Yeah, so see, it was linear because the pelvis was going almost in a straight line. It wasn't intentional; it just happened. But now, since you're moving down, you see the curve, right? You see the trajectory. Anyways, we'll go through that in a bit. So by default, you can keyframe in auto or linear. Actually, we should have used step. Okay, let's finish those two poses, and I'll show you the difference. Okay. Did you work with the bouncing ball? Did you work with like different types of tangents, like auto tangents and linear, stepped?
Work from linear.
Linear?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll show you the difference between the auto linear, how the playback affects it, or how the curves affects. I'll finish those two poses and then we'll go through it. Okay, so we're creating this pose. Now the hips tilted backward because he's landing. So actually, I'll move the legs first. So you can move the legs at the same time. What happened? Let's see what's going on here. Okay, they were just tilted backwards. It's okay. Yeah, you can move them at the same time and just offset them afterwards. So did we tilt? Yeah, we can tilt the pelvis here a little bit because he's landing. I believe a little bit to the left because the left foot is landing first by the looks of it. So I didn't explain these guys here. So the gizmo is the yellow one you see in the center is always parallel to the screen. So if you can see, it always moves with the screen, right? So it's an advantage because you can position your camera or your perspective and then move it according to what you see. The other ones, these ones, is always the 2D axis. So Z and X and Y, it's always 2. So you can move it like this or like this, or use the yellow one, which is always parallel to the screen. I like to work like that because if you're animating a shot with a diagonal camera, it's valuable, invaluable, I should say. So that's what I use most of the time. I just animate to the camera. That's what you're gonna do in the next 2 or 3 years. You're always animating to the camera. But I'll leave it. It's your preference. So you can use whatever you want. I'm just showing you the tools, so you know what's available at your disposal. The foot here is on an angle. Yeah, it's a bit too. Or maybe we don't have the. I think I can make this bigger. It's not gonna help. Looks like it's tilted sideways, so I'm gonna try to mimic it. So here the elbow, the knee is kind of outward. So I'm gonna lock. Let's say it's already pinned. Actually, I like the rotation of the foot, so I'm gonna lock pin rotation, and then move the knee out to get that same shape as in my reference. Now it's broken. It's too much. Okay, let me see it from the other angle. Yeah, so it's another mistake junior animators make. They always break the knee. They always go too much in or too much out. If you actually stand up and try different poses, your knee is always parallel to the rotation of the foot. So don't go like this and don't go like this. You can go slightly. Like this is too much. I would bring it in a little bit so it doesn't look broken. Because you can, unless you're a contortionist, you can't. It's not natural. Okay. I'll fix the other foot. Yeah, good. The spine is backwards, a little bit backwards, not that much. And just remembering other references, the head is always looking to the target. We don't see it here, unfortunately, but these guys always, they're like when a tiger is following the gazelle, their head is always predicting where, the movement, where it's going to go. So you never get this big discrepancy between the head and the rest of the body. So this one is a bit tricky. So it's moving down and up. Okay. This here, we might need to create an in-between after. We'll see. Actually, let's take a look. So what happens when we go from this? Actually, it's not that bad. It goes up, and instead of down and up, it goes up to up, because it's going from keyframe to keyframe. So you might need an in-between afterwards. Okay. Here again, use the shoulders. I'm going to use the shoulder to relax the arm. Feels a bit too backward, so I'm going to move it in a little bit. You can also switch to global. Global is world space, right? So you can, yeah, his arms are very long, so you're not gonna get the same silhouette as the video reference. Here I'm gonna use the same. It's too big. Too much back, yeah. Well, it's broken here too, so the mesh. Let me see. Yeah, it's pointing towards the camera. Let me see if I can give it a little bit better. Yeah, it's pointing towards more the camera. Something like this. Anyways, doesn't have to be exactly, but as long as it's close enough. Here I'm gonna try to use the copy paste again pose. So I'm gonna copy this pose, select the other one, mirror, paste. Whoops. So what we just did is we pasted the pose in full body. So it actually pastes the pose mirrored on the whole body. So you just want the body part. So we need to switch to body part and then paste the pose with the mirror. Okay? Press key, go back to full body, take off mirror, and then adjust this one. So this one, I think it's a little bit more backwards, so we can tweak it a little bit, maybe a little bit higher. And final pose, the landing touchdown. I would go for more this one. Yeah. Let's try that first. Or maybe this, because we're probably going to have, next week, we're going to have the roll. Already is going to have the low motion, the down motion. So we just need the first touchdown after the jump. So probably something like this. So let me see, what's the first pose? Okay, the first pose. So I'm going to go to frame 20. And move this guy down. If I release, no, doesn't work. Okay, I'm gonna need to select both of these, or all three, and move this guy down. Something like this. Maybe here. I'll move the box. We'll move the box after. Okay. Is my trajectory? Yeah, it's pretty linear and a straight line. Yeah. Okay. I was just checking if I moved it off too much to the side, because then it's probably gonna pop he's landing and then he's popping on the landing. So you want to keep that all that motion in one straight line so it doesn't pop. So here rotation down, because on the landing he rotates down. Tilt on the hips. Okay, so rotation, pin the rotation on. So see, this is another example where you want pinning rotation, is you want it to be parallel to the ground. So you want to keep the pinning, because if you don't have it off and you move, see, it's going to have that rotation in it. So here we like this leg position. I'm going to use another copy paste on the other leg. Switch to body part before we do the same mistake. Mirror, select the other foot, paste. Okay, take off mirror, go back to full body, and then adjust this one. Okay, so this one doesn't have rotation pinning. I'll put it on. It doesn't paste the rotation sometimes properly, so you need to adjust the rotation on the foot. But at least it gives you a good base, right? The legs are a bit too much bent, so I'm gonna raise them up. Oh, damn it. Raise them up a little bit. And fix the spine. Just have some nice twist into it. And the arms down. So right now the clavicles are too high. So you're going to need to bring them down. Okay, so we still have the pinning on the arm, so we can remove the pinning. So now when you move the clavicle, it should... Wow, the skinning on this character is very weird. See, I'm moving the shoulder, and it's moving these vertices here, so it's very ugly. Anyways, let's... Can straighten up the spine a little bit because it doesn't look too bent on one way. Okay, I'm going to pin the hand again and move the elbow so that it matches the pose. And this one too. Maybe too much. I think that's it. Let's see what we got. Let's see the trajectory first. Yeah, it's not bad. Good work. Let's see. Okay, so save. So right now, before we do the timing pass, I forgot to tell you about the fingers. So when you characterize a character, he's in T pose, so the fingers too. Don't go too crazy with the fingers now. We're not in polish or anything like that. But the one thing you can do is just make a natural finger pose. Like don't leave them like this. Just relax them and make it one pose is enough. So we could have done this on the first frame. If you forget to do it, you can go actually in body part, go on the first frame, delete all the keys. So when you're deleting keys, it's the same as creating keys. Okay? So when you switch to body part and you delete keys, all the animation is still there. See? But you only have one key for the finger, because remember what we said? Because it's a limb. It's the same thing as the other limbs. Okay? So I'm just going to create a relaxed pose on frame 0. Just to get rid of that ugly T-pose finger, I call it, or mitten. I call them mittens. They're like I always tell my seniors, even seniors, they keep them. And it's like, don't do it. I scream in a joking way. I don't scream for real. So it's good enough. Good. It's good. No, we're not gonna go too crazy. So same thing with the pose. You can copy paste this pose over, create a pose. You don't have to create a pose every time. You can just update it too. So you can go select any one of these poses, update, turn on mirror. You're already in body part. You select the other hand by this one, mirror, paste, and press the key. So now all those. So don't worry, like. Oh, okay. It's because we switch fingers. That's why. That's why those keys are back. So look, we deleted the keys on the right hand. On the right hand. When we switched hands, those keys are back because of the left. We didn't delete it on the left. So don't panic. Delete. But now, okay. So here's the thing. So when you switch the back to body part, full body. Those keys are back. So you know why? Because now the system, you're telling the system, okay, go back to full body mode. So it's going to put a key. It's not actually putting a key. It's displaying those keys as full body. So I know it's a bit confusing, but when you switch back to body part, those keys are gone. But when you switch back to full body, those keys are back. So it's not actually keys on the fingers. It's just displaying what's on all the control rig or all the bones. Is it clear? Kinda? Yeah. It will remain the same. Everything is still there. It's just the display, the displaying of the keys. When you switch from full body to body part, the way the keys are displayed on the timeline is different. Okay? Something to get used to. It's part of the workflow. It's different in Maya, I know, but it's how the software is built. So now we're ready to do a timing pass. Okay? So we switch back to full body. We select any body part. In full body, you can select any body part and move those keys. You don't need to select all the body parts on the controller. Because when you're full body, you're moving all the keys at once for all the body parts. Okay, so the takeoff, I think it's not too bad. You can try to match what's in the video. So actually, so this is our first pose. So here there's like 4 frames. So we can match that. We can, instead of 5, we can go back to 4. Our next pose, I believe, is this. So from this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 4 plus 8, 12. See how am I working? You're matching what's in the video as a start. You don't have to match it exactly. You can stylize it. You can go slower or faster, as long as it looks good for your purpose or for your previs. So that's from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I believe. Or was it the next one? 8, I think. 8. So 12 plus 8, 20. And then the landing, I think it was about 4 or 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. So 20 plus 5 equals 25. So I'll put it to 30. So start and end frame, you can choose the way you want. There's something I didn't cover. So if you just want to play a chunk of the animation, let's say just from 0 to 20, you have this thing here, same thing in Maya. So your full animation is from 0 to 30, but you just want to play the first 15 frames or 13 frames, you can do this. When you double click on the bar, it goes back to 0 to 30. So trajectory is not that great. He just falls right down. So this is what I'm going to touch on layers. Who asked about layers? Sorry. Your name? I'm going to try. I'm trying to remember everybody's name. Nick. Right on. So if you look at the trajectory, you want something more like this. Because look at the video. It's a nice big C. Okay? So what you do is you can either change these 2 poses. Okay, let's do it the proper way. Let's go on a layer. Okay. So I think by default there's no layer. So because we're just animating on the base. So we create a layer. We don't want to touch this pose. This pose is good. Layer. We don't want to touch this pose, so we create a pose on that layer. We create a full body pose, okay? Then we go to the next pose. So where's the next pose? Oh, it's on frame 20. Okay? We go back to the layer and we just move that, okay, because the feet are locked, so we need to move both feet and the pelvis. So we move this on that layer, okay? So now what do you get? Everything after this pose has been adjusted with that offset. It's the same thing in Maya, the same principle. Everything before this pose has been untouched. So let's say you move this pose by mistake. Let's say you do this by mistake and you key it. you want to revert back to what's on the base layer, this little button will do that for you. 0 here. You click on it. It will take the same values from the base layer and put it on that layer. Okay? It's just easier in the beginning to set that key where you don't want to you don't want it modified. You know exactly. Okay, so instead of using the 0 key is your sort of a backup in case you move that key by mistake or that pose by mistake. But if you want a better workflow, just put a key in the beginning where you don't want to touch and then move whatever you want to move after that key. Same thing I did before, right? If you want to move this key as well, you just do the same thing. You go to that key, you go back on the layer, and then you move this one. So now if we play it, you'll get the landing is a bit harsh. I like the beginning. We might need more keys here. We might have a different, because we don't have exact metrics from the video, you might be moving too much. So we need to add more frames. So what do? Is it's the same process. So be careful with the layers. You need to move. I wonder if there's another way to do this. Because if you move these keys now, let's say, which ones do I need to move? It's basically this part is too fast, right? So I need to move this pose and whatever after. So now if I move this pose here, you're only moving the key poses on that layer, okay? But the information on the bottom, on the base layer, it hasn't been moved yet. So you need to do it twice. So that's why it's better to figure out your timing on the base layer before you do any edits on a layer, because you don't have to move the timing twice. Is it clear? Yeah, a little bit? Okay. So if you move something on a layer, you probably have to move it on the base layer as well, on the original layer as well. So we move that to 24, and now if we press play, it's a little bit better, right? So now let's say you like this, you're happy with this result. Save. And that's when you go in body part and you start offsetting stuff. So you want, for example, you want this foot to be a little bit planted before. So you take this, you switch to body part, you take this key and you move it ahead because you want it to be planted later instead of earlier, okay? Now let's say you want the other foot to start going forward faster, okay? You take this key and you push it backwards. So now, see what's going on? You're pushing those keys on the body mode. You're manipulating the keys to be offsetted from each other. Let me see. No, because you don't have any keys on the layer. So if you don't have it, if you modify this key here on the layer, you probably have to do the same on the base layer. So it depends on the situation. It depends on, take it case by case. Sometimes it's fine just doing it on one layer when you move keys. Go case by case. If it starts getting weird and funky, then you know that you need to move it on the base layer as well. So you see, that's where you get the fine detail here. You start offsetting stuff on the limbs. That's when you need to switch to body part, because if you, I mean, technically you can put more keys. You can either offset those keys or put more keys. Instead of, let's say, I want to offset this arm, you can actually put another breakdown for the arm. So let's say it reaches here faster. So you have a choice. Either you offset those keys to go earlier or later, or you put more breakdowns on the limbs, on body part. Okay, it's almost 5. I think you have what you need. I'm not gonna go to more in depth because I think you guys need a break. If you want to work with the F curves, did you work with the F curves in Maya? F curves like these guys? No? Yes? Yeah, a little bit? Okay. So it's basically the same. I mean, if you're more comfortable working with the F curves instead of the viewport, because I personally, I'm old school. I like to see my trajectory in the viewport. So you can work with this directly, or if you want to go with F curves, it's right here. You select your body part, and you have access to all the F curves, the tangents, everything. You can make it smoother here. It's basically the same thing as in Maya. Here, if you decide, let's say you want to make the foot not interpolate between two keys, let's say it's planted. Let's say, I think towards the end is a good example. Let me just try. So let's say you have another key here. There's another pose where he compresses down. If I put another key here, okay, it's supposed to overshoot, but it doesn't. Does it overshoot? Yeah, it does. See, look. So I just put another key after the landing pose. So you see what happens with the foot? This is because the tangents are auto. So you can easily change that to linear. So you select those last keys. See, right now is in auto. You just change it to linear. So now what happens? Oh, you have to do the previous ones to linear. So now it still doesn't. That's why I hate F curves. What happens if we do it here? Okay, that's strange. Oh, I wasn't doing the rotation, that's why. Okay, stupid me. Okay, so I just did only the translation. So if you want it linear on translation and rotation, you need to select translation, rotation values, if you want to call them. Select all the keys and go linear. See, now it doesn't overshoot, doesn't have that little dip. So it's not an auto tangent anymore, auto curve. It's linear. It goes pose to pose. The interpolation is the same. So you have options to change the curves in the F curve and in here. You can do a bulk. If you select the keys here, you right click, go interpolation, that's where you can change it. You have auto, spline. I'm not sure what spline. This is new. Linear we just did. Stepped. I'll show you what step means. Steps is handy once you're figuring out your poses and your timing. So if I switch back to full body, select all the keys, and go interpolation, step normal. That's what you get. So it's playing the poses back to back with the timing that you have as a filler, right? So there's no interpolation, there's zero interpolation, just going pose to pose. I don't know why it's doing this sliding motion here. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, because of the layer. Because, okay, yeah, that's why. So see, once you start dealing with layers, so normally layers is just for editing point. You need to figure out, it's always better to figure out your timing on the base and leave the layers for, let's say, changing posture, changing something on the pose itself. We'll learn more in the next 2 weeks about timing as well in story mode, where you can change the timing and scale it or scale it up or scale it down. Because it's a bit more tricky on layers to tweak the timing because you're going to have to do it twice. So now if I play, yeah, we just fixed the sliding problem because I didn't change the keys on the layer to stepped. Okay? Cool. Any questions before we break? 5 minutes? No? Tired? Time for a break. So the assignment for next week is